I used to have very big problems before I knew how to 3D print with my 3D printer, and I didn't really know how to get through them. Like one time my 3D printer didn't want to print any print that I put on it, even after doing all different things like changing PLA, changing the bed leveling, and doing all those things correctly. I just didn't know what I did wrong. So this video is just a kind of help for those who get started with 3D printing nowadays and need a little bit more help to understand your 3D printer, and continue to watch to learn some more things about that. Hi guys, so welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to talk a little about 5 tips that you need to know before you start to 3D print and using your 3D printer. So starting off is number 1. And number 1 is that you need to understand your 3D printer and what kind of technology it uses, such as FDM, SLA or SLS, and also which materials the 3D printer can use, like PLA, ABS, etc. This is good to familiarize yourself with your 3D printer, so it becomes easier for you to use it in the future, and also that you know how to fix it when it gets broken, or if it gets broken. So for example, I have my 3D printer that is a Ender 3 3D printer, and I know that it can only use like PLA and other types of resins that doesn't really need an enclosure, because this is not an enclosed 3D printer, and therefore you can't print with like ABS, which is very sensitive to like the environment and like the wind. So therefore you need to know what your 3D printer is available for using with. Next thing you need to know is what kinds of filaments there are, and as I talked about, ABS is a filament that is really good. It's very strong, but the downside about ABS is that it is very environment cautious, because you can't print with the ABS printer in the open without an enclosure, because then it's probably going to get loose from the print bed and not print properly, and therefore you can't really use a Ender 3 for using ABS. And ABS also needs a very high temperature to 3D print with, like above 260 degrees Celsius or something like that. So those are 2 things that you need to think of when you're using ABS. But one filament that is very useful for beginners is PLA. PLA is the most common type of plastic used for 3D printing. It is biodegradable to a certain degree, like 80% or 90% of it can be recycled and used again for 3D printing or other types of things. But a downside about PLA is that it is not as strong as ABS, and in some cases it can start to bend at high temperatures, even indoors, like 40 degrees and above, like 40 degrees Celsius or above, or about around 100 degrees Fahrenheit and above. It can start to bend even at those temperatures, and therefore it's not as good to use like on your car, because if your car is in the sun, then your 3D prints might start to melt. But it is pretty good for like just making things like benches, which is those 3D boats, and maybe good for like also some figurines, like a pop figure or other types of cool figurines that you like. So PLA is very easy to use, and it doesn't really care about the environment when printing, so you can print it with pretty much any printer that you have that can get up to 210 degrees Celsius on your 3D printer. Another good thing to know about 3D printing is to get familiar with the 3D printing software that you can see that I use right here. This is Ultimaker Cura, and this is one of the easiest softwares to use if you're a beginner. So all you really need to do is maybe go into Thingiverse and download some prints, and once you have done that, take whatever file you want to like print, like this for example. Like I have printed some survival knives, some butterfly knives. Maybe you shouldn't print knives, but you can if you want to. Or like this file right here, you can print this, which is really cool. Just take it into the software and just start to choose different types of temperatures and infills, because the infill is how much you want to have it infilled. I can slice it and show it to you what it means to have the infill. Okay, as you can see now, the software has sliced this 3D model for me into layers, so the 3D printer can actually print it. And as you can see, this print takes 2 days, 8 hours and 31 minutes, and it requires 412 grams of PLA filament, because that is what I have chosen. That you can see up here, I have chosen PLA, and it takes 2 days, 8 hours. So this is a real big 3D print, and what I mean with infill I will show you right now. Just press preview up here, and I also have some supports. As you can see, this is not really necessary for this print, and you can remove it, and I will show you that. But this is what I mean with infill. As you can see, it's not filled all the way in the middle. It's only at 30% right now, because I have chosen that. So 30% is what I have chosen for this, and this is how much 30% is. And I also chose lines settings, because there are different settings right here. Lightning is the fastest, because then it kind of creates a pattern that only makes it so it is just enough to actually be stable to stand, but not like this, which is really much. But yeah, down here we have support, and for this print you probably don't need support, so I just press off generate support. And as you can see, support has tree setting. As you saw right before, it looked like 3 branches that grew up and supported the 3D print, but it also has a normal setting, which is like a smaller version of the infill setting. And we also have touching build plate and everywhere. What this means is that if you press everywhere, it's going to start to actually support within the structure, and if you press touching build plate, it's going to build like those branches that you saw up to the 3D printer, not from the ground, if you understand. And here you can choose the angle where you want the support to actually generate. If you choose the lesser the angle, the more it will support. Okay, where was I? And yeah, that is pretty much all you need to know about the support. You can choose between 1 and a 90-degree angle, but with a 90-degree angle, it's only going to support prints that are like this, right? Like upright where there is 90 degrees. And the less angle you choose, the more it's going to support. And we also have build plate adhesion right here. And here you can choose between a skirt, a brim. I'm just going to make this smaller so it's quicker. And here you can choose between how big you want it. Like 100% of it is this big, and then you can choose exactly how small you want it. Like, do you want it just 10% of the original size? You can choose that, and this is like this big. And if you want 50%, that's also cool. You just write in 50 if you want exactly 50%. Like that, and then you slice it. And see, now that I only wanted 50%, it only takes 12 hours and 21 minutes to print, and not like over 2 days. And this is how it looks like without the support. And this print I have printed and it does not need support. I can show it to you. I'm just going to get. Or I actually didn't print this type, but I printed a similar one. It just says YouTube and it looks like this. And as you can see, it's the same thing. This was printed without support with, I think, like 20% infill. And it took like 6 hours to print this thing right here. It weighs maybe 30 grams. And what's 30 grams going to cost you? Like, you can get a kilo for $20. So let me do some math right here. This is how much it costs per gram, and this was 30 grams. So it's going to cost you 60 cents or 6 Swedish crowns, which is the value that I have here in Sweden. And what I will show you is now the build plate adhesion. As you can see, this has no build plate adhesion. But if you want that, just press this and then you can choose between skirt. Skirt is, I'll show you in a few seconds what skirt is. This is skirt, and this is just removes all the gunk from previous 3D prints by printing a line around the 3D print. At first, as you can see, it prints around three lines around the print to get rid of some maybe gunk or some things that got stuck during the last print in the nozzle. And we also have brim, which I can show you. Okay, so this is brim. It's kind of the same as skirt. The difference is that this prints all the way in to the actual print where it starts, then it stops. As you can see, it prints layers all the way in, and then stops and starts to print the actual print. And a raft is basically like a base that the whole 3D print stands on, and this is used for if you haven't calibrated your 3D print right. This can be useful for bed adhesion, but it can also be useful for when you're using prints that tend to not stick to your bed as easily. As you can see, this creates a whole base underneath, and it takes like half an hour extra because it needs to create this base all around the print, and it's like, I think, yeah, 4 layers thick, as you can see. 4 layers thick. So that's all you need to know about the different types of build plate adhesions. And what more you need to know is the printing temperature that you will be using, that you can change about up here. I use PLA for most of my prints, so I tend to use 215 degrees. The packaging says to use somewhere between 190 and 220 degrees, so I go with 215 degrees Celsius. And I use a build plate temperature of 60 degrees, that is the bed that the 3D print is printing on. And here I showed before the infill density. You can change that from 1 to, actually from 0 to 100%. 0 is going to look like, I can show you, it's going to be like a hole through the entire print, and it's not going to be structurally able to stand on itself. Maybe for smaller prints that don't really weigh a lot, but if you have bigger prints, 0% is not that useful. As you can see, it's just a big hole through the middle. It's no support, no infill at all inside. I usually use between 20 to 30% on all of my 3D prints, because more than that it's not really that useful, and less than that it's just too easy to break. And here you can choose the wall align count. As you can see, I have 3. That's just the wall that's on outside of your layers. As you can see, I have 3, 1, 2, and 3. And you can change that right here. You can change that to 1 if you just want less integrity, less strength in your print, then you can choose one, and it will be weaker, but it will also take shorter amount of time to print because it will not need to go around the whole of your 3D printing thing 3 times, only 1 time. So as you can see now it's only 1 wall thick, and that's too weak for me, so I usually use 3 walls, which is good for pretty much every print, even including like structural prints that you actually need to hold up other things with. And here we also have the quality. You can choose between, depending on your nozzle size, you can choose between like 0.1 to all the way up to like 0.8 millimeters thick layers. I use 0.4 millimeter nozzle, and use just standard quality for pretty much all my prints, and that's 0.2 millimeters, and that's how thick each of the layers are. And if you want low quality on a 0.4 nozzle, that is 0.28 millimeters, and super quality is really good quality, and that's 0.12 millimeters. And standard quality is pretty much good for everything, except for maybe like if you want good looking figures, then you might want to go with super quality to get the finer quality on your 3D print. That's pretty much all you need to know about Ultimaker Cura and how to use it. It's not really that difficult. Once you get used to it, you can probably get from downloading your print and slicing it in less than 5 minutes from your computer to your 3D printer. So let's go over to number 4. Number 4 is actually calibrating your printer correctly. And this is necessary for correct bed adhesion. Because if you don't level your 3D printer or calibrate it correctly, you can get prints that come off your 3D printer and just come out terribly. And you get heaps amount of stringing, and that's really bad for your prints. Because then it won't be nice and look like this, or this cat right here. And how you do that? Well, you can take a piece of paper and put it between the nozzle and the bed, and then go up or down with your print bed till the paper can't get out from the nozzle and the bed. And you do that on all 4 corners of the print bed, and then you should be pretty much on point with your 3D print calibration. If you want more detail on that, you can probably check out some other YouTube videos that other YouTubers have made. But yes, that's just a simple explanation on how you do it. And most printers nowadays that are a little bit more expensive usually have auto calibrating, and you don't really need to do anything of that. But cheaper printers like the one I use, the Ender 3 Pro that I have, that you need to level and calibrate yourself. And finally we have number 5, and that is learning basic and easy maintenance and troubleshooting of your 3D printer. Before, I was stuck with 3D prints for several hours, several days, not knowing what to do with my 3D prints. But then I watched some YouTube videos and it really helped me. And what the problem usually is either that your PLA doesn't extrude through your nozzle because your nozzle is clogged. And how you unclog your nozzle, I actually just made a YouTube video about that. But what you do is either just replace the whole nozzle or clean it out with one of these really small needles that you can see. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right here. And either just clean out your nozzle or you need to replace the whole nozzle, and that's pretty much the most common issue. Another issue can be bed leveling. Other issues than that can be well, it can be hundreds of different things, but the most common are either bed leveling problem or a clogged nozzle, and those can be pretty easily fixed, and you can get to start 3D printing within a couple of minutes. this was pretty much all for this video. I hope you liked it. And if you did, please give this video a big thumbs up. And yeah, see you in the next video. Bye.